No, 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 no. No, hold on. Okay. Okay. Yeah. Hi guys, today I am so excited to have this guest on for the second time. Let's welcome Kimo Kepano. Kimo is a Hawaiian high seer who has a unique ability to see energy in a way that I've rarely experienced. He's a multi-sensory healer, psychic medium. He's also worked with my daughter Seven a few times, and I have the utmost respect and admiration for the work that he does. So I'm very excited to have him on this time. So welcome again, Kimo.
Mahalo. I really appreciate that. I feel like it's so funny. I feel like we have had many, many play dates. I didn't realize it's only our second one.
Mhm.
Well, the good
Yes.
news is that there's not a storm outside. Last time we met, the cosmos gave us a storm. We
Uh-huh.
kind of cut out a little bit, so we're just going to keep good energy moving forward so we don't get cut out at all.
Speaking of energies, like I kind of, there's so much energy that comes through when I speak to you. It's so funny. It's like it's like the energies get very excited. So I just kind of want to take a moment to pay respects to our ancestors and those who have come before us, and just say thank you to all of the traditions out there and all of the amazing ancestors that have come before us, because I can really literally feel them with me right now.
I
And if you
appreciate
would, I would love if you would give like a blessing or something in your native language. I think that would be very beautiful.
you, of course. When it comes to I'm just so grateful that you're creating space for that. When it comes to Aboriginal practices, as a little aside, for me as an Aboriginal practitioner, so many individuals will say, but why? But what's the point? Why should we have to pay attention to that? When we take a look at the way that our DNA moves, even morphogenetically, we can trace that DNA moves in connective points. And when we're taking a look at that, though something may not be paramount and pressing to someone who doesn't understand the culture, that doesn't mean that it is not paramount and pressing to someone else's DNA. So to take the time to bear respect is a very, very reverent thing that you're doing. And I greatly appreciate that. I greatly appreciate that. Um, let's do this. So for the friends of us that are just kind of listening and tuning in, we'll go ahead and we'll just take a moment, a beat, to just kind of tune the mind in, let the mind settle. If you are driving or if you are at home, just be mindful. If you're on the road, keep your eyes open. If you're at home, go ahead and close the eyes for just a moment. Good. Settle into your breath. In this moment, we are choosing to breathe the same air. We are choosing to inhale on the same frequency and to exhale in the same frequency. We'll do a really easy pule kako, which is a constant, continuous prayer for all of us. And we'll just do a simple breathing technique. We'll breathe in for 4 counts and we'll exhale for 4 counts. I'll count us all in. Hanu, breathe in, e kahi, e lua, e kolu, e ha. Release, e lima, e ono, e hiku, ne balu. Let it go. Let it go, let it go. Good. More resonant now. We're all going to shake it
Yeah.
off. We're
Mhm.
all going to shake it off. Thank you for that moment. I appreciate that. Let's
Yeah,
dive in.
absolutely. Let's get into it. Okay. So, gosh, I have so many questions to ask you. How do you think we got here? Humans. Like, I'm just
You went
gonna
right.
go for the jugular.
You
How
went
do
right for it.
you?
Well, for me, for those of you who are just kind of tuning in and maybe haven't heard me speak before, I do want to say that for me, all of my information that I bring in and the way that I work with scientists and the way that I work with doctors and the way that I work quantifiably as a healer is simply just based on the way that frequency appears. And for me, frequency is a very visual spectrum. And as a small child, I just learned how to cross-reference what I could see, ask questions, find out that it was true, finding out information that I never knew before. Meaning that when you take a look at just mediumship, for example, spirit
Mhm.
energy, finding evidential information that you can bring in, but the same is true when it comes to healing. Being able to tune into the body and find frequency shifts in the body that only that person knows about, or only their doctor knows about. When it comes to the explanation of how we got here, what I do is I take an academic approach to what it visually looks like.
Love
So
that.
that's my explanation of everything. It's just the visualizations.
Mhm.
When I take a look at that, it's really fascinating because even though I am completely aware that I'm looking at human human form, if you go into the DNA level, you can actually go so far. And I actually am curious to see if Seven does this, but you can go so far into the frequency of the DNA that you can connect to their telomeres, which are the little shoestrings that are holding the
Uh-huh.
DNA strands together. And you can trace and map where the telomeres are breaking down. But what the fascinating thing is that if you go down to the telomere level, you can start to see all these like blips of coding that starts to come up. And in those blips of coding, you start to see multiple layers that go back and back and back and back and back, all the way down to source energy. And this is where it gets confusing because when you take a look at source energy, there's no such thing as one. Our brains think of, your body as a one, my body as a one.
Mhm.
But when you go back into the source level, way through the telomere, there's no such thing. It is nebula consciousness. It is amorphous. It is shapeless. And when you get down to
Mhm.
that, then my interpretation of what I believe that I'm seeing is simply just consciousness contracts. And when you
Just
look,
one conglomeration of an
it's
energy that
isn't
like
it
just kind of fractaled off to itself?
Yeah, and it's so interesting because even the idea of that gets confusing for us, even for
Totally.
me. Because then you say, well, then what am I looking at? Am I looking at spirit? And then I would say, no, we're not actually looking at spirit
Mhm.
because spirit is a fractionated version of soul. Am I
Mhm.
looking at soul? Well, soul is a fractionated version of source. So
Mhm.
it gets very convoluted and confusing. So I do have to use an educated hypothesis of what I believe that I can see. But how do I quantify that? When I
Yeah.
take a look all the way down to the telomeres, I've been able to say, well, here's what's breaking down for that system. And a doctor will say, that is very real. How did you see that? Well, because we go into the telomere. But when you go past the telomere into source energy, and you find out information that that person, your sitter, can only perceive when they're going into some kind of hypnotic place of, wow, but I had a dream about that when I was 3 years old. How did you know that? Well, because now you're in connection to their source. So it gets harder to find quantifiable things to pull in once you get to that place, but you can still find them. You can still find them.
So, question then, when you're tuning into spirit energy, how does a person know actually if they're tuning into spirit energy or the conscious collective memory of that person's energy?
That's a
Does that
great
make sense?
question. Yeah, it's a great question. And it gets very, very nuanced. Because I believe that our goal in communication with spirit energy is to get an idea of what was some of the lessons that they had here, a connection to me, my mother, my grandmother, what were some of her lessons? Do I perceive some of those lessons in my life experience? Can I learn from her previous lessons? Her lessons then connect to her contract. So that's how we can perceive spirit of assistance, the person who's expediting the lesson. But if we go all the way back down to consciousness, we say, but then who's creating the contract versus, who's expediting the lesson in the contract, but who's creating those contracts? So we go way, 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 way back. And when you take a look at that, it is two parts of the same equation. Yes, I am tuning into the lesson work of the contract of that spirit, but that spirit is in connection to the larger game plan, the larger contract creator. So you are connecting to source energy, but you're also connecting to spirit energy. And I'm not sure if you have seen this in your sessions. I'm going to assume that you probably have, where
Yeah.
people have convoluted soul and spirit to be synonymous.
Yes. Yes.
And they are versions of the same whole, but they are not the
Not
same
the
whole.
same.
Like
Mhm.
planting an apple seed and getting an apple tree.
Yep.
The apple seed would be an aspect of spirit, but the apple tree would be an aspect of soul contract.
Mhm.
That is where it gets confusing. And I really strongly believe that if we are only saying that, well, spirit and soul are the same thing, well, then we have reached the sum of our knowledge, and there is no summit to this information. I'm positive that there are things that I have not been able to perceive yet in my experience, and hopefully one day I will. but those two things are part of the same equation. That's why it's so confusing to us.
Yeah, it's never-ending learning experience, right? That's what's so beautiful about it. It's like this is a school where we're constantly learning. We get to learn these things, and we get to grow, and we get to have these
Absolutely.
experiences.
Well, and I love that you call it school. So just to utilize that analogy, we have our first grade all the way through our 12th grade, and then we go into our pre-collegiate, or then we go into college, then we go into our bachelor's or master's or PhD and more, which means that it is a growth process. You take the receptacle of information that you have, you twist it around, you turn it about, you go from theory to practical use, and you do it over and over and over and over again. And school is the perfect analogy, because I would not want any of us to repeat the 6th grade, which many practitioners are doing. Many practitioners are regurgitating, meaning that the wonderful thing about you being a practitioner and raising 7 is that you're always learning. Versus when we get to those places where we have those practitioners who are regurgitating information that they learned in a book, and that person who wrote the book learned it from their practitioner learned it from another practitioner. We're regurgitating information that is not being able to fertilize. But
Authentic, yeah.
exactly, who are you now, though?
Mhm.
Because a copy of a copy of a copy is just that. It's not intuition, it's just a copy of a copy. And
I question everything. I
we
question
want to
everything,
question
and I
everything.
question everything over and over and over and over and over again to make sure it's,
Absolutely.
yeah.
And I tell everyone, you should question me. I am not the
Absolutely. I say
barometer.
the same thing. Mhm.
Everything should be questioned. And I think that the thing that makes it challenging for people that we are in service to is that they struggle to understand the differences between information and emotion, because information and emotion can feel like the same thing. Well, I feel very strongly about that. Okay, but that doesn't mean that it's real. But I had a really bad feeling in this house, but that doesn't mean that what you perceived was real. We want quantifiable information in order to
Evident.
exactly to substantiate what you're able to see. And that's where it actually gets exciting for us. Because if you're tuning into something and you know that you perceive it, and you're struggling to figure out, well, how can I give them the evidence of this? What does it make us do as practitioners? We got to work our butts off. In order to find a way to communicate to them, we've got to go around the information, and we can do it. It'll take time and effort for us, but we can, because we want the client to succeed in
Yeah.
their awareness of how to
And
make
to
some.
not need us. And
Exactly.
yes. Yeah.
Oh my gosh,
What
you
is
and I.
so unique about you is that you have the ability to see the things I can only see when I use my medicine, when I work with DMT.
Mm,
I can see almost exactly like the same way that you see soul, soul layers and stuff. I can see those things with the medicine, but not without. So I'm trying to work on that practice to just, get it, I guess, get it solidified. So I think it's so interesting that you just have this natural ability to see that. But it's evidential for me because I can take this, I can replicate it. I can say, serve somebody this medicine and say, what do you see, without me even asking them anything? And they'll say, describe exactly what I'm seeing. And I can do it over and over and over again.
yeah,
And you can do the same with your experiences if you have people who can see as well. And you've been, with doctors who verify the data that you're seeing too. So I think we're at this really interesting point now in time where we're being taken very seriously, and our gifts are really eh, coming to fruition, and doctors and things like that are looking to alternative medicine and things, energy work, because
you're
it's,
right.
yeah.
We're at this place where a lot of doctors are getting to that point where they say, we know that certain things are working, but we don't know how they're working.
Mhm.
For those of people who are curious, who do I work with? I actually never reached out to any doctor or scientist. They found me because of the way that I communicate. So every doctor that I work with and every program that I work with, it has approached me because of what I'm able to do. But I also want to make sure that I say that in a way that doesn't sound like I am the only one, because I am acutely aware that I'm not the only one who does this. 7 is learning how to do this right now, learning how to streamline all the things that she can see and perceive and to make them coherent. And she'll continue to do that her whole entire life. Now, when it comes to that, when doctors say to me, we know, Kimo, that this kind of stuff that you're doing works because we can see it work. We just don't know how. And what I strive to do is to remove the like gatekeeping aspect. And I say, okay, so Why don't we think about this in a few different ways? You're already doing things intuitively, but you just don't realize it. So, for
Mhm.
example, I had a group of doctors in Houston that I was working with, and they said, "But we don't think like you. We need evidence and proof." And I said, "I want you to put all the surgeons in the room." So they separated everybody. They gave me all the surgeons. And when I looked down the row of surgeons, I explained a few things to them. I know that every single one of you thinks like this and does this and does this and does this. And they said, "Well, how do you know?" Well, when you look at surgeons, they all have one major intuition in common. All of them do. And it's the ability to intuit information with their
Boom. Mm-hmm.
right. So why does that make sense for them as surgeons? Their hands guide them. Their hands are steady. They have a steady, calm way to kind of move and get to the information. But because their hands are in motion, their mind goes into motion. They receive a lot of insight from their mind because they're in motion. But they all have the same thing in common, which is why they were able. So that's for me was how I was able to kind of like shake it up for them. And they were like, "Oh, well, then what else?" And then you can
Mm-hmm.
teach them how to say, "Well, now let's like put the scalpel down and you can do energy medicine. You can do energy autopsies, which means this is the
Wow.
exciting part. This is
Yes.
the way that I think about an energy autopsy. If I'm looking at someone who's
Mhm.
struggling with something, you would think, well, you'd have to go in surgically to remove something. I have found if you can pinpoint with accuracy the emotion or the problem in the body, if you just shift things around internally, you don't have to go in with a scalpel. Meaning, and I'll just use an example today. Out of my I take 5 clients a day. And out of today, 2 of them had major inflammation where you think you've got to get on this regimen, you've got to take this kind of antibody, got to do all these things. Well, inflammation is actually one of the fastest things to move. You just have to learn how to diffuse the information of whatever caused it. And when the body perceives you deflaming it, it does it instantly. Where all of a sudden now the body becomes agile again. And like you touch the body, oh my gosh, that inflammation has gone down. And it happens instantly. Meaning that if we can learn how to just say, but what is the trigger? How do we release the trigger? You don't ever have to go in with any kind of drug, with any kind of scalpel. Now, certain things are harder to move inside of the body that might take longer than a few minutes. It might take multiple sessions to do that, but it is not impossible. So that's where doctors have become very curious about energy medicine.
I love that. Do you find that the reason why it takes several times sometimes is because the mind hasn't quite bought into the process of, oh, I'm healing myself yet? The mind, yeah,
100%.
okay.
So we have to remember that there is equilibrium in the body,
Mhm.
meaning that all of our maladies have an emotional equilibrium, which means an emotional imbalance. From the common cold to COVID to cancers to tumors, the only things that I have found are non-envir sorry, are that are non emotional are environmental problems. You know, being hit by a car or like falling down the stairs. Those are those are environmental problems, non-emotional.
Mhm.
Now, the problem is that you might fall down the stairs and injure your back, but now you've had a back injury for 20 years. Well, now it is emotional.
Yes.
So it might have started off as injurious, but now it is actually emotional as well. Because when you can get a client, regardless if you're doing spirit work or blockage removal or medical work or healing work, if you can pinpoint what the emotion is, and if you can get your client to understand the differences between I want to get better versus I'm ready to let go of my belief that I have to be sick. If they get there, healings are fast, which
I
is
give
why
myself permission to heal.
exactly, I give myself permission to heal. I had a client today who I have met with her for over a year and a half, and I
Mhm.
hadn't seen her in about 6 months. And she showed up today having some sense of blockage. And the very first thing I said to her is, your hip, your left hip, what's going on? She goes, you can see that? And I said, yeah, your left hip is a mess. And she says, I have some stuff going on. Well, she took probably about 15 minutes. We did a little bit of an exercise. We took away the inflammation. She doesn't realize that I was trying to assess the emotion and trying to make some adjustments, but she was ready to let go of whatever was causing it. She thought it was arthritis. The doctors were saying it's arthritis. Well, she shifted it in 15 minutes, and all I do is facilitate. And she walked out. She says, I did all that because she was running around. She was jumping. She says, I don't feel anything. Well, that's because you were in the belief system of being okay to let go of that. And
Yeah,
that's the change. That's the
love it.
change.
Mhm. I wanted to shift gears a little bit and ask, because I know a lot of my listeners want to know, and Seven also wants me to talk about some of these things. What is your experience with extra-dimensional, interdimensional beings, ETs? What is your experiences?
Well, so for me, my explanation, I think, well, actually for your listeners, I don't think this will be a shock at all. For
Mm,
many people, it is a shock, my perspective on that. When it comes to ET, either interdimensional or source ET, and again, we have a problem where we think that ET means in body, but there
mhm,
are many intelligence that are non-bodied, that will never be in body.
mhm,
Essentially, those systems are guide systems. Because they themselves, can perceive and project information. And the reason why I call them guide systems is that because they're never bodied, not in human body, they're non-terrestrial, which means that they are extraterrestrial.
mhm.
So when you receive information from your guide, which for you might be consciousness, but if consciousness is an amalgam of non-bodied information, then technically it is alien.
Mhm.
So all of our guide systems come from there. Now, here's where it gets really exciting for me. When you look at those guide systems, they're all technically extraterrestrial, and they all come from different systems. And everyone's body has a different system of guides, which means they have a different connective point to different extraterrestrial systems. And for me, when I take a look at that, it looks like it is always prevalent, like a great big circle moving around you at all time. And certain individuals will get so tuned in that they will perceive that information. They may not perceive it as circular, but they'll perceive it as divine insight, source information, guide information, and it's moving all the time around them. So my connection to alien intelligences or interdimensional intelligences is simply just removing all your filters, every single one of them. And when you remove all your filters, then all you perceive is frequency. The whole entire universe is nothing but frequency.
What do you think about, there's so much fear or propaganda going around about, oh, they're demons and this, that, and the other. And I know you and I agree on this, but what's your advice to people who have these fears?
So first of all, I don't ever blame the person. I don't ever
Mhm,
blame the person. What I do blame is if you are propagating that fear by some sense of dogma that is supposed to be fear-based. But usually you have learned that from someone else, and they've learned it from someone else, and they've learned it from someone else. And our brains are wired to do that. Our brains do that on purpose because our brains want to keep our bodies safe. So when you can understand that they're doing that as a natural human reaction, I don't get so offended or angry. But what does upset me is when it is propagated to be hurtful to other individuals. Demons are real. They can hurt you and they can scratch you. They can do all these things. And well, that's where it gets tricky and challenging because we can actually take a look at what we perceive as some kind of, I don't know, demonic possession. When you take a look at the brain chemistry through schizophrenia, bipolarity 1 and 2, personality disorders, and then through the content of how we create some kind of nocebo, which is negative SIBO. When you go into a nocebo, I perceive negativity, therefore negativity hurts me. Therefore negativity scratches me. Negativity can put their hands.
self-perpetuating or creating the reality.
Exactly,
Mhm.
exactly. And when that happens, people have no idea the power of the mind. I hear all the time from individuals, well, then explain why their body did that. Why their body did what? Why their body got scratched? Okay, well then before we do that, you explain to me the power of the placebo. Two people walk into a room, both have cancer. We give them both a pill to fix their malady. One person gets a sugar pill, the other person gets something else to be of assistance, and they both receive a change in the body. Well, what happened? Well, the person who got the sugar pill, who all of a sudden became cured, their body created the exact pharmaceutical makeup of what was needed. We actually know that this happens. This isn't even metaphysical. That's quantifiable through science. The same rules apply for nocebos. For a negative self trajectory, the body can do phenomenal things in a negative perspective if you believe it to be true.
That's so powerful. I mean, if you think about, we turn literal bread into energy. Like we can
Hey,
turn,
hello.
this is the most intelligent organism ever. I mean, why couldn't we do these things?
Hmm?
And we limited ourselves by thinking, oh, this is demonic or this is going to control me. Then that's giving the power away to something else. And then because people always tell me, well, I've had these experiences. How do you explain the experience I have? It was so real. I'm like, yeah, yes, it's real for you until it isn't. Until you believe, you're perpetuating it. When you believe, when you stop believing that that's real, it'll go away. Confront those things. They go poof.
Well, and
You
I
know?
don't want anyone to believe that I don't understand what I'm talking about, meaning that for me, at such a young age, because I was such a young child seer, I absolutely perceived things that I believed were
Same.
demonic.
Same.
I absolutely perceived things I thought were harmful and hurtful. But I was also, I mean, at a very young age, I was very inquisitive, and I was able to find by the time I was 4 years old, all of the things that I formerly believed as nefarious, being able to learn how to transmute. And I started to do that as a kid. That doesn't mean that I was successful as a kid. There was lots of, summits of my own knowledge. All the way through high school, I was still having a lot of those scary experiences. But as you become more and more skilled, but it is a desire to be skilled, desire to be changed, as you transmute and transmute and transmute, now the ideal of nefarity or even anything luciferic is not a part of my paradigm.
Yeah.
Which is why I always equate this to the beginning of a really bad joke. Two paranormal investigators walk into a bar. One of them sees demon, one of them sees your grandmother. Who's correct? They both are. Right? It depends on perspective.
Love it. You know what's so funny too is like Seven recently has started being scared and she never used, she was like fearless. And I was like, oh, it's school. It's school. And it's like the friends doing the, oh, I'm frightened of these things. And so I'm trying to just, it's okay. There's nothing to be afraid of. Remember who you are and remember you are more than this physical body,
Well,
you know?
and you and I have
Mhm.
talked about this. Children up until around the age of 7.5 going into 8, they're at the age of everything being completely synesthetic. When they grow up and now they're going into age 8 and more, the frontal lobe is changing. So they go into the age of forgetting where it's very easy for them. Most children will do it. Even for me, my age of forgetting went into fear, right? But luckily, I was able to bring it back online very, very quickly. So it would not be unusual. And a part of that is her level of empathy, because empathy does have a leveled system. Not everyone is empathic. And if she's feeding and feeling all the vibrations of her friends around her that are experiencing group resonance fear, then it is going to slightly convolute her perspective as well,
That's
which
a
is
great point. Thank you.
and it's a part of it, to be honest. I would want her to not do that, but it's also a part of her lesson.
You're right.
Part of her
Yeah,
lesson.
as it was mine.
Exactly, exactly. But the great thing about your daughter is that she has an exorbitant amount of verifiable proof that she can look back on for all the videos that she has done
Yeah.
to say, I know what I was able to do. I can see that I was able to do that. And I can get back to that source as soon as I want. But I'd have to be able to make the choice. And she might choose, and I don't want to put this timeline out there, but she might choose to disengage for a while.
We're going through that right now, and I've told her that's okay. Whenever if you decide she just said she wants to take a break for a little bit, and I said okay, absolutely.
This
Do you?
There have been, I'm just trying to think out loud for a second if I should say this. I have seen her in the timelines that are going to blow your mind. They'll blow your mind. But remember, timelines are all contingent on
Mhm.
choice,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
But maybe you
See,
and I can talk about that.
I've seen them too, so I know what she's capable of, and but I'm not. I don't want to do what my parents did to me, is to put me in a box and say you must do this. So I'm
Mm,
just like, you do you, sweetheart. I love you, whatever you do. And it seems the more I do that, the more she kind of comes back
Good.
to who she is. So it's a really beautiful thing.
Glad to hear that.
Yeah. What do you think about the non-human intelligences working through certain people right now on Earth to help us grow?
Well, you can find evidence of that everywhere, and seven is one of them.
Mhm.
Right. And so that happens. What's interesting is we see evidence of that because of social media. There are thousands of children who are doing that are not on social media. Probably millions, but really only like showing the aptitude to do that, but then it might get pushed out of the system because of dogma or because of culture. Culture can do that sometimes as well. So
Mhm.
they're everywhere. It literally is a seeding. And I'll give the example. I just bought all this acreage, right? And I have all these trees that were planted about 16 years ago, and they planted them at the same time, and they plant a whole bunch of trees expecting that 50% of them will die because then they want to see which ones grow. Well, it just so happened that this property that I bought, none of the trees died. So they're tight with each other. But my point is, when it comes to seeding, really it's about which children are going to persevere, which ones are going to continue to push back with the expectation that about 50% of them are not going to lean fully into their abilities because of the age of forgetting.
Yeah. Yeah, that's why it's important to reinforce. This is why I really want to send this message out to parents is like support your children when they're going through this so they don't feel lost and alone. Because when they have other kids surrounding them that have these gifts, like when Seven and Bray talk on the phone, they're like, oh my gosh, they go crazy. They have a
Those two kids, I would love to be a fly on the wall when
Mhm,
those two kids hang out together because what's really interesting is that when it comes to seership, which is different than psychic abilities, let's just quickly identify that. Mediumship, you being the facilitator between the living and the dead. Psychic abilities, utilizing your psionic senses to be able to intuit information through energy work. Intuition, similar to that. Seership is different as well. Seership is the perception that you can visualize and see both not only through the mind's eye, but through cognition, all of those different things in form. And because Seven and Bray are both seers, but they're different forms of seers.
mhm,
But they're different forms. And I haven't worked with Bray, so it would not be ethical for me to tune into him. But just from a visual perspective, looking at the two of them, Seven goes into healer seership. And
mhm,
Bray, probably, I mean, he probably could. That kid is amazing. But
mhm,
Bray goes into cognitive seership, is what it
mhm,
looks like. And that's a
mhm.
different kind of seer, but they're both seers.
Yeah, but and these new kids coming in now are just even more and more just blowing me away. Like my friends have a child who's already having visions and she's calling me like, "Oh my gosh, what do I do?" I'm like, "Okay, calm down." Like just remember they feel your energy. If you
Yep.
get scared, they're gonna get scared. So that kind of stuff. So it's really beautiful because it really feels like it's happening everywhere. And speaking about that, what do you think? Seven keeps talking about this major event that she feels is going to happen in the next couple of years. What do you think about that?
Well, when it comes to major events, for me, I'd have to quiet my mind to see if I could tune into the experience that she is meaning because there's always major events.
She's
Oh,
talking about like a great shift of consciousness where things will be a lot better, as she says. She's also said that open contact pretty much is going to happen. There's going to be some form of communication that will be it won't be questionable anymore.
right. Well, and that so that age has actually already started to happen. But in terms of how transparent it is, that transparency isn't going to happen for a few more years, but it has already started to happen. Meaning that because we're so slow and Neanderthal as a human race, because we are so dense, because we're so slow, we already know that contact has been happening for many, many decades,
Mhm.
by individuals and presidents who have slowly alluded to, I have been in contact with this, but we have to kind of sweep it under the rug because of what? Fear. Now,
Mhm.
that the more we put that onto platforms through social media of being non-fear based, the easier it becomes. The problem is you have the fear-based conspiracy theorists who do alien work. And that's the part that leads the narrative. My issue
Reptilians are bad and they're gonna come get
drives me
you.
crazy. And you and I both know that you will have people who will fight us tooth and nail
Mhm,
to
mhm.
say no, that this is what it is. But my problem with that is any of that information of assistance to you? Well, yes, because that way we'd learn how to not be, so submissive, no one's going to control us. But who said they're coming to control you? Technically, that's a very humanistic perspective
Mhm.
because we're all about control. When was it? It was not, I think maybe it was last summer. Was it last summer where they had a great big summit where they're talking about alien connections
Yes.
in our
Mhm.
US? My
Yep.
problem with that summit that was happening
Mm.
is you look at the American perspective. When the Americans spoke, what did
Fear.
they say? Is
Fear.
all fear. They
Yeah.
said, well, we're trying to get that technology. Why? Because we are the most powerful people in the world. We are the most powerful nation, and we want to be able to utilize this for protection. The entire summit was based on we need the intelligence so we can do what? Protect
We
ourselves
can
from what?
defend ourselves from
Exactly. From what?
what?
From another country?
They're
So
so
then
intelligent that they're so intelligent they could have wiped. I mean, if that's what they're gonna do, it's like forget about it. And
blows
yet
your
another
mind.
country, it makes no sense. Unity is the
But
only way.
again, it's like we have to strengthen our border so that way we can utilize this kind of alien technology to strengthen our. It's like this is so ridiculous to me. Your whole entire goal to communicate to alien intelligence is for war,
Hmm.
which is
And they
again,
wonder why they don't communicate with them anymore. Like,
hello.
why aren't we having contact with them anymore? And they have to go to people like the Bledsoe family and then, to study them because they can't have experiences anymore.
You know what I would love for this is a total aside.
Mhm,
If you speak to Aboriginal practitioners who have
mhm,
already been in contact, if you can follow the generational lines, they may speak about it differently by, the individuals who come to offer them information about healing. If you have a summit with the Aboriginal practitioners, it's a completely different ball game.
mhm. Wow.
It's a completely different ball game.
Yeah.
And when you speak to them, they speak in smaller circles,
Mhm.
but they have already been in communication for millennia. But that's not what we're connected to. We're connected to government.
Yeah, it's pretty well known. I mean, my friends who live in Peru, it's like, this is normal. They're like, what? Yeah, of course.
Absolutely.
Absolutely normal. So, um, do you see us coming together into like, do you see things like calming down? Because with all this nonsense with like the Trump pew pew and all of that stuff, like, do you see that settling down?
Well, I will say this, and again, everything that I see that has come true is based on the large contingency of the choices now.
Yeah.
I want to say something. I need to be very, very mindful because I don't want to push any paradigms,
Mhm.
meaning that I don't want to push this thing that I can see coming true. But currently, the way that you can take a look at politics, things are leaning more right. And I don't mean correct. I mean leaning more to the right, leaning more Republican based. And I don't even fault Republicans, but
Mhm.
but that system is actually more fear-based systems. So my problem right now is that currently in this moment, in today's climate, which can change tomorrow, but today's climate is we're leaning more right in terms of where we're going to be going next, which is all about protections and fears and all those kinds of different things. And me personally, as Kimo, as a non-political person, I don't want that to be my reality. So then I don't speak about it too much because we have what's called group resonance,
Yep.
which is the more individuals put weight into it, the more the manifestation occurs.
When I asked Seven who's going to be president, she said us. And I was like, what? Because I kept getting nobody when I was tuning in. I kept getting
Well,
nobody. And
definitely.
she said us. And I was like, oh, that's interesting.
So if you think about that, back that up for a second. When you pay attention to us, I think that both sides are shooken up right now
Mhm.
with an attempted assassination and then with Biden pulling out. All of
Mhm.
a sudden we're saying, so then what is going on then? Regardless of what spectrum you're on. And I really hope that it's starting to fertilize and gestate our own self-awareness.
Yeah.
I hope that it does it. I don't perceive right now that it's going to lean that way and manifest because some kind of red tape is going to kick it and say, well, we have to do something. So currently it leans a little bit more right. I don't want that to happen personally, but I think it's leaning more that way now.
I mean, it's kind of funny. If this was a business chemo, they would have like filed chapter 11 already. Like it would have been sinking ship, like we're done, but it's like, let's revive this whole thing. Like, okay. I kind of think we should scrap it, start over, but
Right. Well, and again, I think that the part that people don't realize is that whoever is leading our country is just a talking head.
Mhm.
There's so much more behind the gilded curtain,
Yeah.
Wizard of Oz, that we just simply are not paying attention to. Wow, that's a good turn. How did we get down that path? We get
The
down
Wizard of Oz.
there.
Speaking of the person behind the curtain, I wanted to ask you because this is a personal thing that I've always wanted to know, and I know people have asked you, what was your experience with Mother Ayahuasca?
So it was really fascinating. I love
Mhm.
Mother Aya. I love this. This is, and if people are listening and they are unfamiliar, we're talking about the ancient medicines that is over 7,000 years old, right? Over 7,000 years old. We know that we can quantify that Mother Aya can actually change your brain frequency. to bring, contingent on how you utilize it, to actually change the synaptic response, to perceive the world slightly differently. And the whole entire point of it is to open the mind, to face your inner shadow, so that way you can create some sense of change. For me,
Sometimes gently, sometimes not so
oh my
gently.
gosh, right? On all the above. To try to summarize it without going into a deep, deep story, I wish if I could go back and say on my very first time in Mother Aya, I would have done it differently.
Mhm.
Because I went in with an intention and I dieted before we went in. I went with a very, very clear intention. But I didn't think to cognitively work with my abilities to turn them down. So what ended up happening, me on Mother Aya, I lost complete control, which is the point, right? But I
Mhm.
couldn't control my sight. And
Mhm.
because I couldn't control my sight, the shaman could not get me out of the experience. So
Oh,
I'm
okay.
there with the group, and in our experience was supposed to last anywhere between 8 to 10 hours. We're in hour 12, and they can't get me out of it. And I'm aware that I can't get out of it. It's kind of like if you were
You
to
could
think
hear
about
them, but you could hear them talking to
I
you and
was
you
I was
couldn't.
I was coherent,
Mhm.
but what happened was I couldn't stop seeing all the things that I could see, but it was like a collapsing timeline on top of each other at all times, which means that as I was looking at everyone, I was seeing birth, death, birth, death, birth, death, birth, death, all everything. And I couldn't, because
Wow.
normally as chemo, I control my abilities,
You can
but
slow
I
it down.
lost all control. So by hour 12, they had to completely change the whole entire ceremony to get me out of the experience. And it was an aggressive experience to get me out of it. And I
Wow.
was working really hard internally to come out of it because I was getting further and further and further down the rabbit hole. And that's actually something that I talk about even when I'm not on Mother Aya, meaning
Mhm.
that I have to be mindful because once I start going down into what I can see, I can't stop. And I have to pull in the reins because I will go and go and go and go and go and go.
I'm the same. I'm the same way. I have
Yeah.
to pull myself back because I can get very lost in the whole
You get
experience.
lost in the sauce. So
Yeah.
in the end, my experience was phenomenal. I learned a lot more about energy work simply by just being present and observing that. If I could go back and do it again as a seer, I would totally do it again, but I would do it differently,
Yeah.
more
Yeah.
control.
Yeah, I was just wondering because I saw one of your videos about it and you said they had to like parachute in to like they had to use all of their methods to get you out. I was like, oh my goodness. I wonder. So have you worked with the medicine again
I
since or
haven't worked with it again. I would love to work with it again, and I want to pick your brain a little bit. You said something that I would love to just offer you a little bit of a change for you.
absolutely.
Because I know that you can see what I see, and you said, but I need Mother Aya. You don't need anything. I, you
True.
know, and I
Mhm.
wonder if there's a code switch of language that we can utilize for you just to kind of help you out more. So, for example, you already have evidence that you can see.
Mhm.
Focus on that. I know that I can see frequency. I have experimented with Mother Aya, but I know that I can see. And let that be the first dominant thing that you understand. So that way we remove all the blockages. They start to
So
dissipate
it's
and
just a recoding situation.
absolutely, really.
Wow.
Because for you, may I
Mhm.
offer you a little tidbit?
Of course, absolutely, yes.
For someone like you will get high on Mother Aya without using Aya by being in certain circumstances
That's
outside,
true.
around certain kinds of herbs, certain
Mm.
smells actually can take you back to those places because again, when you are under Mother Aya, the whole point is to see and perceive the grid. There's a very specific grid that you can tune into if you go really deep into the medicine, right? And for me, as soon as I took it, I remember I drank at 9 o'clock, and by 9:41, I was already inside of a grid. And I was drawing the grid and everything. And when I came out of the whole entire experience, everyone around me was like, "You drew the grid." And I was like, "Well, didn't you guys?" They're like, "No, you only do grid work if you're like deep, deep, deep." But it came so fast. But really, it's just grid work. And
Yeah.
when you look at grid work now, after from that moment forward, seeing grid work is so easy for you now, meaning that you can see where the grids intersect and you could go,
Yep.
deeper, deeper down
Yeah.
down the
Yeah.
rabbit hole. But you can do that now. You can do that now by smelling certain kinds of herbs. You could do that now by drinking different kinds of teas if you wanted to. You have to go into the cellular network of your environment and you can induce it. Even in a small little way, you can induce it. You can do that today if you wanted to.
Wow, you're right. I have noticed that I can totally bring back the feeling and I can totally bring it on. It's like sometimes certain things trigger it, or I can, if I really focus, I can bring it on too. It's really fascinating. So am I just tuning into my cellular memory of it? And so then I don't technically, not that I need anything, but I
It's
don't,
both. You are tapping into your cellular memory and to conscious cellular memory
okay,
and fold the two pieces together.
okay.
So, I'll give you an example. When I was under, the very first thing that I could see is what I now call the guide of change. And it visually looked like cumulus clouds moving around every single person. And
Mhm,
when I was under, because I channeled when I was under, I channeled this very, very large entity that came in, and I channeled the entire 12 hours that I was under, to the
mhm.
point where where the shaman was asking me questions. Right. So as I was channeling, one of the things that I channeled was this guide of change, and I watched everywhere, and I kept on asking, but what is that? And then this guide of change moves in right before someone has a new thought change, or before there's a new thought that's going to be happening that changes the circumstances of
Mhm.
everything. And it's around you right now, which tells me I think that you are closer to change than you realize,
Wow,
much
I
closer.
just got the chills.
Right. It's interesting that you rub your right arm because it's technically pulling further over on your right hand side. It's probably just a few feet over your crown, but it's predominantly over here on your right hand side. And when I see that, I already know that a client or a person is about to have an aha moment or an epiphany, but you've got to
Wow,
lean into it.
okay. Yeah, and Spirit's definitely been stripping away things that are not necessary right now for me to have and really shaking things up, like certain relationships that were not, it's just all gone. It's like,
Yep.
so I'm like, oh, okay, I'm trusting the process, but this is a very challenging time, right?
And I want you to trust that process because I have also found, and this is another breadcrumb for all your listeners, when I perceive change, and change happens all the time, whether that's an epiphany change or it's like, our meeting is over, right?
Mhm.
Change energy moves forward. When someone does not allow change energy to flow through them, it stops in a very specific part of the body. Do you want to know where it stops?
In the gut,
Close. It
heart.
stops in the heart. And when it stops in the heart, it does this really interesting pressure-like thing where it starts to create some kind of AFib or some kind of like extra heartbeat or something, which means this happens every single week. Clients come in and they say, there's something wrong with my heart. Doctor did an echocardiogram, put me on the treadmill, nothing is wrong. And I say, where have you had change lately? Well, what do you mean? Where have you come to a crossroad and you said, I take the job or I leave the job. I move or I don't move. I stay in the
When you fight it, that causes the extra.
divided, it's schisms. When change isn't when it's perceived, but it's not
Mhm.
received through the body, it stops in the heart. And I have never, ever had a client, and this happens literally every single week, who has come in and said that's not true. If your doctor said nothing is wrong, but you feel pressure and an extra bit of like an anxiety attack without anxiety, that's change.
I felt it. I've already felt it. I already know what you're talking about. I was like, what is this? Am I having, like, I literally yesterday was like, am I having a heart attack? What is this? And I asked my guys, they're like, no, it's just energy. And I was like, okay.
So now we're going a step further. What
Mhm.
you're going to do now is, where is my change? What have I not allowed? And what am I resistant to? Meaning, when you make the choice, whatever that choice is, I'm not going to judge it. Whatever you choose, you've got to set the other choices free. If you choose and then go backward, but I could have done it like this, then all of a sudden this comes back again. You've got to set the other ones free.
Thank you. That's really great advice and very applicable for a lot of people, what a lot of people are going through right now, because I constantly see on TikTok, everybody's like, the book, right now is so tough with the changes and the Schumann resonance and everything. I'm like, yes, I definitely feel like on a collective level, we are all going through a major de-peeling of the onion, like peeling back of the layers of things that don't serve us anymore. And there's also, I don't know if you've noticed this, but this like coming to the surface, like bad behaviors are really being pointed out, right? Like it's like can't really hide this kind of stuff anymore. So it's really, important that people are being authentic. And I love that. I mean, because it's like, I don't I don't particularly enjoy when Hollywood does these weird things, but like I like that that's being revealed, that these things are being outed and these people cannot continue to do things like that.
We're going through the age of authenticity, and it's interesting because some people think that authenticity is telling the truth and being hurtful. That's not authentic, that's being mean.
Mhm.
People think that the age of authenticity is to call the government out because they're doing evil things. Well, that's not authenticity. That is either conspiracy or anger, which is a valid emotion, but that's not authenticity. Authenticity is seemingly neutral, but it's just being the truest version of your understanding. And it gets hard. To be authentic is very, very hard, which is why people don't do it.
No, I always say like really the only way for us to move forward is to just kind of wipe the slate clean and say, okay, we get that you've done these bad things. Let's just start over and start fresh and kind of move forward. And people get so mad at me. They're like, no, they have to pay for this. And I'm like, who are you to judge? It's all
Mhm,
lesson. What if
mhm.
they learn their lesson now and they move forward and become an amazing human being because somebody gave them the chance to do that, because somebody didn't judge them? You know,
Yep,
so that's how I see it, because what my guides have taken me through and shown me is that honestly, amnesty is like we get to have grace for ourselves and for other people.
absolutely. I completely agree.
Where can people get a hold of you?
Oh, well, thank you for asking that question. So if you made it to the end of the podcast, I'm so glad that you stayed down our little rabbit hole. So the best way to get in touch with me is to go onto my website, thelightseer.com, where you will have access to all of my social media from TikTok to Instagram to Facebook to YouTube. You will also see that I have session availability. I meet 5 days a week, Monday through Friday. I also have seminars that I teach twice a month that you can log on to. I also have a trimester modular course that I release 3 times a year, and I've got a few different modules that I have. I have one that you can do 3 times a year. We have a new healing module that's coming up next year. So there's many, many ways, many ways to see me on many, many different platforms.
And I cannot say enough. Seven has worked with you 2 or 3 times, and it just phenomenal. Like the way that, especially like if you're a mother and you have a child who is gifted or in this department at all, I cannot recommend, definitely send them to Kimo, because he Seven loves him. She calls him Uncle Kimo. She
I'm
absolutely
her
adores
uncle. That's my
absolutely
niece.
adores him. Yep, yep, yep. And so what's coming up for you? What do we get to look forward to see Kimo doing?
Well, a few things I don't want to jinx, but we do have new healing modules that are coming out, and I really try to make all of my modules easy for a muggle to understand, for a non-witchy person to understand, so that way we
Mhm.
understand that everyone has access. So in our module that we have released about intuition, I teach people 12 different ways to be intuitive. In our new healing module that comes out next year, I teach you 12 different ways to self-heal. New things that are coming up, we are in the very beginning phases, knock on wood, of getting my information on a platform. Gaia and I are working together to get a new show out on Gaia, but that'll take us some time.
Wow. Oh my gosh, congratulations. I love that for
In,
you.
in
That's
the beginning
fabulous.
phases of it.
I will help manifest this for you, because I
Yes, please.
definitely, yes, that gets to happen. That definitely gets to happen.
I
I
hope
love
you manifest it because I'm putting you on it.
that. You're so sweet. Oh, I love it. I love it. Yes, I would love to see more of the Chemo on Gaia TV.
Oh, good, good,
Absolutely.
good,
That would
good.
be fabulous. So yes, we're all manifesting that happening for you. Well, thank you so much again for coming on. Again, it's always a pleasure having you. I'm sure we'll have a third and a fourth and a fifth, because I mean, there's so many questions I have that we couldn't even scratch the surface in today, but we'll get to all of them.
Thank you. Mahalo nui for having me here.
Thank you so much.